So, here is something worth thinking about as you settle in tonight, in the quiet, in the dark, as the room grows still around you. Look up, in your mind, at the night sky. It is full of stars. Beyond them, galaxies, hundreds of billions of them, each holding hundreds of billions of stars. The universe is almost unimaginably vast and almost unimaginably old. There has been so much space and so much time and so many worlds that you might expect the cosmos to be teeming with life, crowded with voices, busy and loud. And yet, as far as we can tell, it is silent. We have looked and we have listened and we have found nothing. No signals, no visitors, no sign of anyone at all. Tonight we are going to sit gently with that silence and with one possible reason for it, an idea called the Great Filter. You do not need to stay awake for any of it. The question at the heart of tonight is one of the simplest anyone has ever asked, and one of the deepest. Where is everybody? The universe is so large and so old that life should have had countless chances to arise and countless chances to spread. Even if life is rare, there have been so many worlds, over so many billions of years, that somewhere, surely, someone should have gotten started long before us and spread out and made themselves known. The galaxy could be crossed, even slowly, in a small fraction of its age, so it should, by now, be full. And yet we see no one. We hear no one. The sky is quiet. That gap between what we might expect and what we actually find is one of the strangest facts about our situation, and it has a name. It is called the Fermi paradox, and the Great Filter is one attempt to explain it. This is a story about that silence and about a genuinely unsettling idea, held gently, in a way that turns out to be more peaceful than frightening. Because here is the thought at the center of the Great Filter, and it is worth holding lightly as you drift. Somewhere along the long road from lifeless matter to a great civilization spreading among the stars, there may be a step, a single step, that is so extraordinarily hard to pass that almost nothing ever makes it through. A filter, a barrier in the road, and the deep question, the one that gives this idea its quiet weight, is a simple one. Is that filter behind us already passed, so that we are among the rare few that made it through? Or is it still ahead of us, waiting, so that we, like everyone before us, may not make it much further? We do not know, and tonight we will sit with not knowing, calmly, and find that it is not such a frightening place to rest. You do not need to follow every step of it. You do not need to hold the names, or the numbers, or the arguments. If you drift off somewhere in the middle of the silence, that is perfectly fine. The great quiet of the universe will go on exactly as it is whether or not you are listening, as it has for billions of years, without ever once needing your attention. The point tonight is not to solve the mystery, which no one can, but to rest and to let your mind wander gently out across the vast and silent cosmos, and to feel, in a calm and unhurried way, how strange and rare and quietly precious it is to be here at all, a small warm spark of life and thought on one small world in all that silence. Let us begin, though, not with the silence, but with the reason we expected noise. Because to feel the weight of the Fermi paradox, you first have to feel just how many chances the universe has had to fill itself with life. And the numbers, when you let them wash over you slowly, are almost beyond belief. So let your shoulders soften and your breathing slow, and let us begin by counting gently the worlds. Start with our own galaxy, the Milky Way. It holds somewhere between 100 billion and 400 billion stars. Let us just say hundreds of billions. That alone is a number no mind can truly hold. If you tried to count them, one per second, without ever sleeping or stopping, it would take you thousands of years just to count the stars in our own galaxy. And for a long time, we did not know whether those stars had planets. We hoped, but we did not know. In the last few decades, that has changed completely. We have learned to detect planets around other stars, and we have found them everywhere we have looked. Planets, it turns out, are not rare. They are ordinary. Most stars have them. The galaxy is not a scattering of lonely suns. It is full of worlds. Let that recent discovery sink in, because it changes everything about the question. For all of history, we did not know. Did other stars have planets? We hoped so, but we could not see them. They were too small, too dim, lost in the glare of their suns. And then, in just the last 30 years, we learned to find them, and we found them everywhere, around nearly every star we checked. Big ones, small ones, hot ones, cold ones, worlds beyond counting. So the stage is not empty. The stage is crowded. Billions of worlds, in our galaxy alone, many of them roughly the size of the Earth, many at the gentle distance where water could be liquid. The places for life are not rare. They are ordinary. And that only makes the silence stranger. If the worlds are everywhere, then where is everyone? So take the hundreds of billions of stars in our galaxy and know that most of them have planets, and that a good fraction of those planets are roughly the size of the Earth, and that many of those sit at the right distance from their star for liquid water to be possible, in the gentle zone that is neither too hot nor too cold. Even by cautious estimates, that leaves billions of worlds in our galaxy alone that might, in principle, be able to host life as we understand it. Billions. In one galaxy. And this is just our galaxy, one among hundreds of billions of galaxies in the observable universe. Let that widen, slowly. Hundreds of billions of galaxies, each with hundreds of billions of stars, each star likely with planets, a good share of them potentially suitable for life. The total number of possibly habitable worlds in the observable universe is a number with more than 20 zeros after it, a number so large it has no real meaning to the human mind, a number larger than the grains of sand on all the beaches of the earth, by far. That is how many chances the universe has had, at least in terms of places, and it has had those chances not for a moment, but for billions of years. The universe is nearly 14 billion years old. Stars and planets have been forming for most of that time. There has been an ocean of time and an ocean of worlds. Sit with the time as well as the worlds, because both matter. 14 billion years. That is not just a big number. It is almost the whole age of the universe. Stars have been born and lived and died and seeded new stars over and over for most of that span. Our own sun is a latecomer, formed only about 4.5 billion years ago, when the universe was already more than 9 billion years old. So, there were worlds, countless worlds, billions of years before the Earth even existed. Think about that. Whole planets, warm and wet and suitable, spinning in the light of their stars for billions of years before our sun was born. If life arises readily, it had all that time, on all those older worlds, to begin and to spread. It had a head start on us of billions of years. So where is it? The time was there. The worlds were there. And still, the sky is quiet. And here is the part that sharpens the puzzle. It does not take very long on cosmic timescales to cross a galaxy. This surprises people, so hold it gently. Even without any faster-than-light travel, even with ships far slower than light, a civilization that wanted to could spread from star to star, settling one system, building new ships, moving on to the next, and in this slow, patient, hopscotch way, it could fill an entire galaxy in something like a few million years, or a few tens of millions at most. That sounds long. But against the age of the galaxy, which is more than 10 billion years, a few million years is nothing. It is the blink of an eye. It is less than 1 part in 1,000 of the galaxy's life. Do you see what that means? It means that if even one civilization had arisen anywhere in our galaxy, even once, even billions of years ago, and had chosen to spread, it could have filled the entire galaxy long before we ever appeared. The galaxy could have been colonized, end to end, 1,000 times over in the time that has been available. Every habitable world, including our own, could have been visited, or settled, or at least marked, long ago. And yet, as far as we can tell, none of that happened. We arose on a quiet, untouched world, in a galaxy that shows no sign of anyone having crossed it. The place should be full. It looks empty. That is the paradox, in its sharpest form. Let us make sure the sharp version is clear, because it is easy to soften it by accident. The point is not just that we have not met anyone. The point is stronger and stranger than that. Even one civilization, arising just once, anywhere in the galaxy, billions of years ago, could have spread to every star by now. Not with magic, not with faster-than-light ships, just with patience. Settle a world, build new ships, move on, repeat. Do that for a few million years, which is nothing against the age of the galaxy, and you fill it, end to end. So the galaxy could have been colonized 1,000 times over before we ever appeared. Our own world could have been visited or settled long ago. And yet here we are, on an untouched world, in a galaxy that shows no sign anyone has ever crossed it. Does that not stop you when you really feel it? It should be full. It is empty. That gap is the whole of the mystery. The person whose name is attached to this puzzle came to it not through years of study, but in a single, casual moment, over lunch. And there is something lovely in that, worth pausing on. His name was Enrico Fermi, one of the greatest physicists of the 20th century, a man central to the birth of nuclear physics. In the summer of 1950, at the laboratory in Los Alamos, in New Mexico, Fermi was walking to lunch with a few colleagues, and they were chatting, as physicists do, about flying saucers, which were much in the news at the time, and about the possibility of travel between the stars. The conversation moved on to other things. They sat down to eat. And then, in the middle of lunch, apparently out of nowhere, having been quietly turning it over, Fermi suddenly asked his famous question, "But where is everybody?" His colleagues laughed, because they knew at once what he meant, even without the setup. He meant, with the whole galaxy so old and so full of stars and so easy to cross given enough time, why have we seen no sign of anyone? Why has no one come here? Why is there no evidence, anywhere, of any civilization but our own? Fermi, with his gift for quick estimates, had seen in a flash that the numbers did not add up. The galaxy should be full. It appears empty. And that simple lunchtime question, tossed off between bites, has haunted us ever since. It is one of the few genuinely profound questions that can be stated in 3 words. Where is everybody? There is something worth admiring in how the question arrived, not after years of study, not in a grand paper, over lunch, between bites. A casual thought, turned over quietly, and then spoken aloud. Where is everybody? And everyone at the table understood at once. That is the mark of a truly deep question. It is simple enough for a child to ask, and hard enough that we still cannot answer it 3/4 of a century later. Fermi did not solve it. He just saw it clearly and named it in the plainest possible words. And sometimes that is the most important step of all, not answering a question, but noticing that it is there. He noticed, and once noticed, it could not be unnoticed. The silence had a shape now, and a name, and it has waited for an answer ever since. It is worth sitting for a moment with how strange it is that this is a question at all. We tend to assume, in stories and in daydreams, that the universe is full of others, that the galaxy is busy with civilizations, that we are one voice among many. But when you actually look, when you actually listen, that assumption meets a wall of silence. There is no evidence, none at all, for any intelligence beyond the Earth. Not a signal, not a probe, not a structure, not a trace. The most natural expectation, given all those worlds and all that time, is that we should see someone, and the most basic observation is that we do not. Holding those two things together, the expectation of company and the fact of silence is the whole of the Fermi paradox, and it is where every attempt at an answer, including the great filter, must begin. It helps to be clear about why it is called a paradox at all, because the word can mislead. A paradox is not a thing that is impossible. It is a thing where our expectations and our observations collide. Here, the expectation is company. All those worlds, all that time, the easy crossing of the galaxy. And the observation is silence, complete, total silence. Both seem solid, and yet they cannot both be simply true, or we would have found someone. So one of them must be wrong, or incomplete. Either our expectation is mistaken, and life or its spread is far rarer than we assumed, or our observation is mistaken, and the evidence is there, but we have missed it. Which is it? That is the whole game. Every answer anyone has ever offered is really a claim about which of those two things to doubt. Hold that, and the whole debate becomes clear. About a decade after Fermi's lunchtime question, a young astronomer named Frank Drake tried to make the puzzle more precise, to turn the vague sense of should be full into something you could actually reason about. In 1961, preparing for a small meeting of the handful of scientists, then interested in the search for life beyond Earth, Drake wrote down what has become one of the most famous equations in all of science, though it is less an equation to be solved than a way of organizing our ignorance. It is now called the Drake equation, and it is really just a gentle chain of multiplication, a way of breaking the huge question into smaller pieces. The idea is this: if you want to estimate how many communicating civilizations there might be in our galaxy right now, you can multiply together a series of factors. How many stars form in the galaxy? What fraction have planets? How many planets per star might be suitable for life? On what fraction of those suitable planets does life actually begin? On what fraction of those does life eventually become intelligent? On what fraction of those does intelligent life develop technology that sends signals into space? And finally, how long such civilizations last before they fall silent, whether by dying out or by simply moving on. Multiply all of those together, and you get a rough guess at how many voices there should be in the galaxy at this moment. It is a beautiful piece of thinking, because it takes an overwhelming question and organizes it into manageable parts. But it has a catch, and the catch is the whole point. We only know the first few factors with any confidence. We know now roughly how many stars there are, and that most have planets, and that many of those planets could be suitable. Those first terms are no longer guesses, but the later factors, the ones that matter most, we hardly know at all. What fraction of suitable planets actually develop life? We have no idea. We know of exactly one planet where life arose, our own, and you cannot draw a reliable rate from a single example. What fraction of living worlds produce intelligence? Again, one example. How long do civilizations last? We have been broadcasting for only about a century, and we do not know our own future, let alone anyone else's. So the Drake equation, in the end, does not give an answer. It gives a shape to our not knowing. Depending on what you plug in for the uncertain factors, you can make the answer come out as millions of civilizations, or as exactly one, which is us, alone. The equation is honest about this. It does not pretend to know. It simply lays out, clearly, exactly which unknowns are doing all the work. And that turns out to be its great gift. It tells us where the mystery really lives. The mystery is not in the number of stars or the number of planets. We have those now, and they are enormous. The mystery is in those later, unknown steps. The steps from a suitable planet to a living one, from a living one to a thinking one, from a thinking one to one that lasts. Somewhere in those steps, the great emptiness must hide. And that is exactly where the great filter will point. It is worth pausing on how much the puzzle has narrowed, because that narrowing is real progress. Once, every part of the question was a mystery. How many stars? Unknown. How many with planets? Unknown. How many suitable? Unknown. But not anymore. We have those numbers now, and they are huge. So the mystery has moved. It has been pushed down the chain, into the later steps, the biological and the historical ones. How often does life begin? How often does it grow complex? How often does it become intelligent and technological and lasting? Those are where our ignorance now lives. And that is a kind of progress, even without an answer. We have cornered the mystery. We know which room it is hiding in. It is not in the stars or the worlds. It is in the steps from a dead world to a living, thinking, lasting one. Somewhere in that stretch, the silence is made. But before we come to the filter itself, let us sit for a while with the silence, because it is worth feeling how thoroughly we have looked and how completely quiet the sky has remained. It would be one thing to say the universe seems empty if we had never really checked. But we have checked. For more than 60 years now, in an effort usually called the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, we have pointed radio telescopes at the sky and listened patiently for any signal that might be artificial, any whisper of order in the noise, any sign that someone out there is broadcasting. It is a difficult search, and we have covered only a small fraction of the possibilities, and we should be humble about that. But we have listened, seriously, for a long time, and the sky has stayed silent. We have listened for deliberate messages, the kind a civilization might send on purpose, a clear beacon saying, "Here we are." We have found none. We have listened for the accidental leakage of another civilization's own communications, the way our own radio and television have leaked faintly into space for a century. We have found none. We have looked with our telescopes for signs of enormous engineering, vast structures that an advanced civilization might build around its star to capture its energy, which would glow with a telltale warmth. We have found none. We have searched for probes in our own solar system, for any artifact that is not ours. We have found none. Everywhere we look, and every way we look, the answer, so far, is the same. Silence. This is what people sometimes call the Great Silence, and it is the observational heart of the whole puzzle. It is not merely that we have not been visited. It is that the entire sky, as far as we can tell, shows no sign of anyone, anywhere, ever. No ruins on other worlds, No engineered stars, no wandering probes, no signals in the dark. In a universe that should, by the sheer weight of numbers, be capable of producing life again and again, we find ourselves apparently alone in a silence so complete that it becomes, itself, a kind of evidence. The silence is data. It is telling us something. The only question is what? That is a subtle idea, and worth turning over slowly, because it flips how we usually think. We tend to think that finding nothing means learning nothing. You looked, you saw no one, so you know no more than before. But that is not true here. The silence itself is information. Think of it this way. If the galaxy were full of loud, spreading civilizations, we would almost certainly see them. We do not. So the galaxy is probably not full of loud, spreading civilizations. That is something. That rules out whole classes of possibility. The quiet is not empty of meaning. It is heavy with it. Every year we listen and hear nothing. We learn a little more about what the universe is not. The trick is reading the silence correctly. Does it mean no one is there? Or that they are there but quiet? Or that we have not listened well enough? The silence is speaking. We are still learning its language. There is a temptation, when faced with the great silence, to reach quickly for an easy answer. And there are many easy answers on offer, each of them reasonable, none of them quite satisfying. It is worth walking through a few of them gently, because thinking them through is what leads, in the end, to the sharper and stranger idea of the great filter. Each easy answer says, in effect, do not worry. The silence does not really mean we are alone. Here is a simple reason we would not have heard anyone even if the galaxy were full. And each one contains some truth. But each one, on closer thought, struggles to explain the silence completely, which is exactly why the puzzle refuses to go away. It is worth holding these easy answers gently and fairly, because they are not foolish. Each one is a reasonable thought, offered by thoughtful people. And each one is partly right. The trouble is not that they are wrong. The trouble is that they have to be perfectly, universally right to fully explain the silence. And that is a very high bar. Could one reason hold for every civilization, everywhere, across billions of years, with no exceptions at all? That is what it would take. One quiet holdout, one rule breaker, one accident, anywhere, ever, and the silence should have broken. So the easy answers soften the puzzle. They do not dissolve it, because they lean on a kind of perfection the universe rarely provides. That stubborn residue, the part no easy answer quite covers, is what makes the great filter worth considering at all. The first easy answer is distance. Space is enormous, and the stars are terribly far apart, and perhaps everyone is simply too far away to hear or to reach in the time we have been listening. There is real truth in this. The distances are staggering, but it does not fully dissolve the puzzle, because the galaxy, remember, is also very old. Old enough that even slow travel could have crossed it many times over. Distance explains why we might not chat easily with a neighbor. It does not explain why, in 10 billion years, no one has ever spread across the whole galaxy and left a trace we could see. The vastness of space is real, but so is the vastness of time, and time is on the side of the paradox. The second easy answer is that they are out there, but quiet. Perhaps civilizations do not broadcast. Perhaps they listen rather than speak, out of caution, or lose interest in radio, or use some technology we cannot detect. Perhaps the galaxy is full of quiet ones, all listening, none speaking. This too has some force. but it strains belief that every single civilization, without exception, across billions of years, would choose silence, would leave no accidental trace, would build nothing large enough to see, would send out no probes, would never once, anywhere, make a mark we could notice. For the silence to be explained this way, the quiet would have to be perfect and universal and permanent. And perfect, universal, permanent anything is hard to believe. The third easy answer is that they are here, or have been, but hidden. Perhaps we are being watched, deliberately left alone, like animals in a great reserve, until we are ready. This is sometimes called the zoo hypothesis, and it makes for wonderful stories, but it suffers the same problem as the silent one's idea. It requires that every civilization, everywhere, forever, agrees to the same hands-off rule, with no exceptions, no rebels, no accidents, no one ever breaking the quiet in all that time. A single civilization, once, choosing otherwise, would end the illusion. Perfect agreement across the whole galaxy and all of history is a very heavy thing to lean an explanation on. And the fourth easy answer is simply that we have not looked long enough, or hard enough, or in the right way. This one is true and important, and a good reason for humility. Our search has been brief and partial. We have listened for only a few decades, across a small slice of the sky, for the particular kinds of signals we happen to know how to make. It is entirely possible that the evidence is there, and we have simply missed it. This is the honest scientist's caution, and it should temper everything else we say tonight. And yet, even granting all of that, the basic shape of the puzzle remains. The galaxy is old enough and crossable enough that a single early civilization could have made itself unmistakably obvious by now, everywhere, including here. And we see nothing. The caution softens the paradox. It does not erase it. So the easy answers, each with its grain of truth, leave a residue behind, a stubborn core of strangeness that will not quite dissolve. And that residue is what led a thinker named Robin Hanson, in the 1990s, to frame the puzzle in a new and sharper way, a way that has haunted people ever since. Hanson, an economist and polymath, was thinking about the Fermi paradox and about that chain of steps in the Drake equation, the long road from dead matter to a galaxy-spanning civilization. And he asked a simple, piercing question. What if, somewhere along that road, there is a step that is almost impossible to pass? Think of the whole journey as a series of gates. First, a suitable planet must form. Then, on that planet, life must begin. Dead chemistry must become living, self-copying matter. Then that simple life must survive and persist. Then perhaps it must develop into more complex life, with intricate cells. Then into many-celled creatures. Then into animals with nervous systems. Then into intelligent tool-using minds. Then into a technological civilization able to reach for the stars. And then that civilization must survive long enough and choose to spread. Each of these is a gate that must be passed to get from a lifeless rock to a presence among the stars. And Hanson's insight was this: if the galaxy is silent, then somewhere in that chain of gates, there must be at least one that is extraordinarily hard to pass. One gate so narrow that almost nothing makes it through. That gate is the great filter. Let us make the picture as plain as we can, because it is the heart of the whole idea. Imagine the road from a dead world to a civilization among the stars as a series of gates. Rock becomes life. Life becomes complex. Complex life becomes intelligent. Intelligence becomes technology. Technology reaches out and spreads. Each is a gate. Each must be passed. Now, We know the road can be started because it started here, and we see that the end, a galaxy full of visible civilizations, has not happened. So what does that tell us? It tells us at least one gate is nearly shut, so narrow that almost nothing passes. That is the filter. It is not a place, it is not a thing. It is just the hardest gate on the road, wherever it happens to be. And its narrowness is exactly what would explain the silence. Almost everything, it seems, stops at that gate. The only real question left is which gate it is. The logic is quiet and inescapable, and worth turning over slowly. We know the journey can be started, because it started here. We know the early gates can be passed, at least sometimes, because we passed them. And we observe that the final result, a galaxy full of visible civilizations, has not happened. So the road from start to finish must be blocked somewhere by a barrier so severe that in all the billions of worlds and billions of years, essentially nothing has made it all the way through to spread across the stars. There must be a filter, a step where nearly everything stops. The only questions are which step it is, and, far more importantly for us, whether we have already passed it, or whether it still lies ahead. That is the great filter. Not a thing, not a place, but a step in the long story of life, a gate so narrow that it explains the silence. And the reason it grips people, the reason it can feel unsettling, is that its logic cuts both ways. If the filter is behind us, we are a rare and lucky survivor, one of the very few to make it through, and the future is open. But if the filter is ahead of us, then we are approaching it, like everyone before us, and our own long silence may be waiting, just up the road. Which of those it is, we cannot yet know, but we can think about it gently, and that is where we turn next. Let us walk slowly and calmly through the candidate gates, the steps that might be the great barrier, because it is a gentle and fascinating thing to consider, and none of it need trouble you. Remember, we are looking for a step so hard that almost nothing passes it. Where in the long road might such a step lie? Consider the very first gate, the beginning of life itself, the moment when ordinary chemistry, lifeless molecules, first became something that could copy itself and evolve. We call this abiogenesis, the origin of life from non-life. And the truth is, we do not understand how it happened, even once, here on Earth. We know it happened early, surprisingly early, not long after the Earth cooled enough to allow it. But we do not know whether that was easy or a staggering fluke. It is possible that the leap from chemistry to life is so improbable, requires such a precise and lucky arrangement, that it almost never happens, that it happened here, and essentially nowhere else. If so, then the first gate is the great filter, and it is behind us, and we are alone, because starting life at all is the miracle. Consider the next gates, the ones that took a very long time here on Earth, which is itself a clue. Simple life, the tiny single cells we call bacteria, appeared quickly, but then, for something like 2 billion years, life stayed simple. Nothing more complex arose for an immense stretch of time. And then, at last, something remarkable happened. One simple cell somehow came to live inside another, and the two became a single, more complex cell, the kind that all plants and animals are made of. This union, the birth of the complex cell, seems to have happened only once in all the history of life on Earth, and it took 2 billion years to occur. That is a hint, a real one, that this step might be extraordinarily hard, a gate that even simple, thriving life almost never passes. Perhaps the galaxy is full of worlds coated in simple slime, and the leap to complex life is the barrier that stops nearly all of them. That is a strange and quietly haunting picture, worth sitting with for a moment. A galaxy full of life, but not life like us. Life like pond scum, thin films of simple cells, coating warm, wet rocks on world after world after world. Alive, yes, but never more than that, never complex, never thinking, never looking up. Why would that be? Because the leap we take for granted, from simple cell to complex cell, may be the hardest step of all. On Earth, it happened only once, and it took 2 billion years. 2 billion. Life sat simple for almost half the age of the universe before it found the trick. Was that bad luck? Or is it just that hard? We do not know. But if it is that hard, then the galaxy may be teeming with life that never got past the slime. Full, and yet silent. Alive, and yet alone. That would be a strange kind of company, everywhere, and none of it able to answer. Consider the later gates, too. The rise of many-celled creatures from single cells, the emergence of animals with nervous systems, the long, slow climb to intelligence, and then the rarest seeming thing of all, at least in our one example, the leap from intelligence to a technological civilization, from clever animals to a species that builds radios and rockets and reaches for the stars. That has happened, as far as we know, exactly once in the 4 billion years of life on Earth, among all the countless intelligent and social species that have lived. Dolphins did not build telescopes. Crows did not launch probes. Only we did, and only once, and only recently. Perhaps intelligence that becomes technological is itself the narrow gate. It is worth dwelling on how unusual our own step really was. The Earth has had life for nearly 4 billion years. In that time, countless clever creatures have lived. Dolphins, with their big brains, crows and ravens, solving puzzles, octopuses, elephants, apes of many kinds, whole dynasties of intelligent animals. And how many of them built a radio? How many launched a rocket or sent a signal to the stars? One. Just one. Us. And only in the last 100 years, out of 4 billion. Does that not give you pause? Intelligence, even high intelligence, is not so rare on Earth. But intelligence that reaches for the stars has happened exactly once. Maybe that final leap, from clever animal to technological civilization, is the narrow gate. Maybe minds are common, and minds that build starships are almost impossible. If so, the filter is recent, and behind us, and we are stranger and rarer than we ever guessed. Any one of these could be the great filter, and there is a genuine art to reading the clues. The steps that took a very long time on Earth, like the birth of the complex cell, are the better candidates for a hard filter, because their slowness hints at how improbable they were. The steps that happened quickly, like the origin of simple life, are trickier to judge, because quickness could mean the step was easy, or it could be a trick of the fact that we are here to observe it at all, which biases what we can see. Scientists have spent real effort trying to reason through these clues, trying to work out which gate is the narrow one. And the honest answer, once again, is that we do not yet know. But the shape of the reasoning is clear, and it leads to the question that matters most for us. Because here is the crucial thing, the fork in the road on which everything turns. It matters enormously whether the great filter is behind us or ahead of us. And those are the only two possibilities. Either the near impossible step is one we have already passed, or it is one we have not yet reached. Let us take each in turn, gently, because the difference between them is the difference between the most hopeful and the most sobering reading of our situation. Suppose the filter is behind us. Suppose the hard step, the near impossible gate, was the origin of life, or the birth of the complex cell, or the emergence of technological intelligence. Some step we have already, against staggering odds, passed. If that is true, then it is wonderful news in a strange and lonely way. It would mean that we are rare, perhaps unique, one of the very few things in the whole galaxy, or even the whole observable universe, ever to have made it this far. The silence would simply be because we are, in a real sense, first, or nearly so, and the future would be open. Having passed the hardest part, there might be nothing ahead to stop us from spreading, and lasting, and filling the quiet ourselves. In this reading, the emptiness is not a warning. It is a measure of how precious and improbable we are. But suppose instead that the filter is ahead of us. Suppose the early steps are actually common, that life begins readily, that complex cells and intelligence and technology arise again and again across the galaxy, that many, many civilizations have reached roughly where we are now. And suppose that the near impossible gate lies further along the road, at some step we have not yet reached, a barrier that stops technological civilizations before they can spread among the stars. If that is true, then the silence is a warning. It means that everyone who came before us, everyone who reached our stage, hit that wall and fell silent, one after another, without exception, and it would mean that we too are approaching that same wall, and that our own long silence may be waiting for us, just up the road. In this reading, the emptiness is not a measure of how special we are. It is a preview of our own likely fate. That is the hard version, and we should look at it honestly, though gently, before we set it down. If the filter is ahead of us, then everyone who came before hit a wall. Every civilization on every world that reached our stage went silent before it could spread. What would such a wall be? We can imagine candidates, a tendency to destroy oneself once one has the power to, a trap that every technological species falls into, some danger we cannot yet see, waiting further along the road. If that is the shape of things, then the silence is not empty. It is full of the ghosts of those who came before, all stopped at the same gate we are approaching. It is a sobering thought, but hold it lightly. It is only one possibility among several, and even if a wall lies ahead, nothing says we cannot be the first to see it coming and to find a way through. Being warned is not the same as being doomed. This fork leads to one of the strangest and most counterintuitive ideas in all of this, and it is worth sitting with, because it turns a hopeful-sounding discovery on its head. It concerns what we should hope to find when we search other worlds for life. Naturally, we hope to find life. It would be one of the greatest discoveries in history to find even a trace of simple life on Mars, or in the oceans beneath the ice of a moon of Jupiter or Saturn. It would feel like wonderful news, a sign that we are not alone, that life is common, that the universe is fertile. But the logic of the great filter suggests something disquieting. The philosopher Nick Bostrom put it memorably. When it comes to finding life elsewhere, he argued, we should hope to find nothing. Follow the reasoning gently, because it is subtle. If the great filter is what keeps the galaxy silent, then the filter is real, wherever it lies. The only question is whether it is behind us or ahead. Now suppose we search Mars, and the moons, and the nearby worlds, and we find that life has begun again and again, that it is everywhere, that the early steps are easy. What would that tell us? It would tell us that the early gates are not the filter, because everyone passes them. And that would push the filter further along the road, toward the later steps, the ones we have not yet passed. The more common life turns out to be, the more the great barrier must lie ahead of us, rather than behind. So finding abundant life, which sounds like the best possible news, would actually be a bad sign, a hint that our hardest test is still to come. And it runs the other way too, which is the quietly hopeful part. If we search and find that we are truly alone, that life did not begin on Mars, that the nearby worlds are dead, that the early steps are as rare as they might be, then that would suggest the filter lies early, behind us. In some step we have already miraculously passed, and that would mean the hardest part is over. Emptiness around us in this light is reassuring. It suggests we are the rare survivors, not the doomed latecomers. So the silence we have been treating as eerie may, in fact, be the most comforting thing we could find. The more alone we are, the safer our future may be. It is a strange inversion, and it takes a moment to feel. But once you feel it, it changes the whole mood of the silence. Let us walk through the inversion once more, slowly, because it is worth really having. We search Mars. We search the icy moons. What do we hope to find? Our first instinct says life. Finding life would be thrilling. But think it through. If life is everywhere we look, then the early gates are easy, and the filter must lie later, ahead of us, where we have not yet passed. That is bad news. But if we look and find nothing, no life anywhere nearby, then the early gates are hard, and the filter may lie behind us, already past. That is good news. So the eerie conclusion is this. For the sake of our own future, we should hope the other worlds are dead. We should hope to be alone. Is that not strange? The loneliest possible finding may be the most hopeful one. Emptiness around us, which sounds so sad, may be the quiet sign that the worst is already behind us. Let that settle, because it is genuinely one of the most peaceful ways to hold the great silence. We tend to feel the emptiness as loneliness, as something sad, a vast cosmos with no one to talk to. But through the lens of the great filter, the emptiness may be exactly what we should hope for. It may be the sign that the deadly gate is behind us, that we have already passed the hardest test there is, that the future is open and ours to fill. The quiet sky, which seems at first like an absence, may be a kind of quiet reassurance, whispering that we are among the rare ones who made it through. It does not prove that, of course, but it allows it, and that possibility is a gentle thing to rest on. Now, in the spirit of honesty that this channel cares about, we must add something important, because the great filter, for all its elegance, is not the only way to think about the silence, and it may not even be necessary. In recent years, some careful researchers have argued that the Fermi paradox may not be much of a paradox at all, that it may quietly dissolve once you handle the uncertainty properly. This is worth understanding, because it takes some of the weight off the whole worry, and it is a fine example of clear thinking. The argument goes like this. When people estimate the number of civilizations using the Drake equation, they usually plug in a single best guess number for each uncertain factor, and multiply, and get a big answer, and then feel puzzled that the sky is empty. But that is not the right way to handle deep uncertainty. Some of those factors, especially the chance that life begins at all, are not just uncertain. They are uncertain across an enormous range, spanning many, many orders of magnitude. We genuinely do not know whether the origin of life is a near certainty on a suitable world or a once-in-a-universe fluke. And when you do the mathematics correctly, accounting for that vast range of uncertainty rather than a single guess, something interesting happens. A large fraction of the reasonable possibilities lead to a galaxy or even an observable universe in which we are, quite naturally, alone. The silence stops being a paradox. It becomes simply one of the expected outcomes, given how little we know. In other words, we may not need a great filter at all to explain the silence. We may just need to admit how uncertain the early steps really are. If the origin of life, or some other early step, is even occasionally as rare as it might plausibly be, then being alone in our galaxy, or even in the visible universe, is not strange at all. It is ordinary. It is what a great many honest estimates predict. The eerie feeling of the paradox comes partly from false precision, from pretending we know the odds better than we do. Handle the not knowing honestly, and the eeriness softens, and the silence becomes far less mysterious and far less threatening. This is worth holding on to, because it lifts a real weight, and it is simply good thinking. Where does the eerie feeling of the paradox come from? Partly, it comes from false confidence, from plugging a single tidy guess into each unknown, multiplying, getting a big number, and then feeling spooked that the sky is empty. But we do not actually know those numbers, especially the first one, the chance that life begins at all. We do not know if that is nearly certain or nearly impossible. It could be either. It spans a vast range. And when you carry that honest uncertainty through the math, rather than a false guess, a large share of the reasonable outcomes simply have us alone, not as a paradox, as an ordinary result. So maybe there is no deep mystery at all. Maybe we are just early or rare in a way that a humble accounting of our ignorance would predict. That is not eerie. That is just honest. And it is a gentler place to rest. This does not mean the great filter is wrong. It remains a real and useful idea, and the deadly gate may well be out there, behind us or ahead. But it does mean we should hold the whole worry lightly. The silence might be a warning. It might be reassurance. Or it might be nothing surprising at all, just the natural result of life being rarer and more uncertain than our tidy equations pretend. All three of those are live possibilities, held by serious people, and no one yet knows which is true. And there is something freeing in that, a permission to set down the fear and simply wonder. Let us dwell then on the comfort, because there is real comfort here, and it is worth drawing out slowly as you settle towards sleep. Whichever way the truth turns out, the silence need not be a frightening thing. Consider the possibilities we have gathered. Perhaps the filter is behind us, and we are rare survivors, precious beyond measure, with an open future. Perhaps there is no single filter at all, and we are simply alone because life is uncommon, which again makes us precious and our future open. Only one branch of the possibilities, the filter lying ahead, carries a real warning, and even that one is uncertain, and even that one leaves room for us to be the exception, the ones who see the wall coming and find a way through. Add it all up, and most of the ways the story could go are not grim at all. Most of them make us rare, and lucky, and quietly extraordinary. And there is a deeper comfort still, one that does not depend on which answer is right. It is simply this: whatever the reason for the silence, we are here. Against whatever odds, through whatever gates, we exist, a living, thinking, wondering species, able to look up at the empty sky and ask why it is empty. That is not nothing. In a universe that may be almost entirely lifeless, We are a place where matter has woken up and begun to understand itself. Whether we are the first or the rare, or simply alone, the fact of our being here at all is a kind of miracle, however it came about. And the silence, rather than diminishing that, makes it shine brighter. If we are rare, then everything about us, every life, every thought, every quiet night like this one, is rarer and more precious than we usually let ourselves feel. There is a way of hearing the silence then, not as loneliness, but as a kind of responsibility, and even a kind of peace. If the galaxy really is quiet, if we really are among the very few or the only ones, then we are the keepers, for now, of something extraordinarily rare in the universe, which is life that knows it is alive. That is not a burden to carry anxiously into sleep. It is more like a quiet honor, a reason to be gentle with ourselves and with the world, to value the brief warm spark of consciousness that we happen, against all odds, to be. The empty sky does not have to make you feel small and alone. It can make you feel chosen, in a way, and quietly grateful. One of the few points of light and thought in an ocean of silent dark. It is worth spending a little while, too, on the people who have devoted themselves to listening, because theirs is a gentle and hopeful story, and a soothing one to rest against. The search for other minds in the universe has always been the work of a small and dedicated few, often working with little funding and much patience, simply because they believed the question was worth asking. Frank Drake, who wrote the famous equation, spent much of his life on the search and pointed the first serious radio telescope at the stars, listening for signals, back in 1960. Carl Sagan, whom we have met before tonight in other stories, was a tireless voice for taking the question seriously, for believing that it was worth the effort to look. And there have been others, quieter, but no less devoted, who spent whole careers listening to the sky. There was an astronomer named Jill Tarter, who led the search for decades, who inspired a famous fictional character and, more importantly, kept the real search alive through lean years when few others cared, sitting with the silence night after night and refusing to give up on the question. These are patient people, doing patient work, listening for a signal that may never come in their own lifetimes or ever, and finding meaning in the listening itself. There is something moving in that, in devoting a life to a question so large it may never be answered, simply because it is one of the most important questions there is. For that is the quiet nobility of the search. It may never succeed. We may listen for another 100 years, or another 1,000, and hear nothing, and never know for certain whether we are alone. But the listening is worth doing anyway, because the question matters, and because the only way to find an answer is to look. And even the silence, gathered carefully over the years, teaches us something, narrowing the possibilities, sharpening the puzzle, telling us a little more about where the answer cannot be. The people who listen are not wasting their lives on nothing. They are mapping the silence patiently so that we understand it better, whatever it finally means. And there is a gentle heroism in that, in listening faithfully to a sky that has not yet answered, and may never, and doing it anyway. There is one more thing worth saying about the search, and it is a hopeful one to carry toward sleep. We are only just beginning. For all our decades of listening, we have examined only a tiny fraction of the sky in only a few of the ways a signal might come. Our tools are getting better, quickly. New telescopes are being built. New methods are being tried. The search that has found only silence so far is a young search, a first tentative reaching out, not a final verdict. It may be that the answer is out there, waiting, and that we simply have not yet looked in the right place, or the right way, or for long enough. The silence, so far, is real, but it is the silence of a conversation barely begun, not one that has ended. And that, too, is a gentle thing to rest on. The question is still open. The listening goes on. Let us take a slow, quiet moment now, the way you might drift along a thought before sleep, and simply sit with the silence itself, not as a problem to be solved, but as a thing to be felt, gently. Imagine you could hear the universe. Imagine you could listen, all at once, to every world, every star, every corner of the galaxy, and hear whatever there was to hear. What would come back? As far as we can tell, tonight, the answer is stillness. A vast, deep, patient stillness, stretching in every direction, across hundreds of billions of stars, across hundreds of billions of galaxies, a silence so complete and so enormous that it becomes, in its own way, beautiful. It is not an empty silence exactly. The universe is full of sound, if you count the physical kind, the crackle of radiation, the hum of stars, the deep, slow processes of matter and energy. But of the other kind of sound, the sound of minds, the sound of anyone calling out, there is, so far, nothing. Just the quiet turning of the cosmos, going about its ancient business, with no one, as far as we can hear, saying anything at all. And there is a strange peace in that, if you let it settle. The universe is not shouting. It is not crowded with voices competing for attention. It is calm and vast and quiet, like a great dark room in which you are, perhaps, the only one awake. Picture yourself as that one waking mind for a moment, held gently. All around you, for unimaginable distances, the worlds turn in silence. Some are barren rock, some are wrapped in poison air, some perhaps are coated in simple life that has never stirred beyond the slime. And here, on this one small world, on this one quiet night, there is you, a mind, awake, aware, wondering about all the rest. You may be rarer than you have ever let yourself believe. The universe may have made very few things like you, able to look up and ask where everyone is. And if that is so, then this ordinary moment, lying here in the dark, thinking these thoughts, is not ordinary at all. It is one of the rarest things the cosmos does. It is the universe, in one of its very few waking corners, quietly coming to know itself. There is no loneliness in that, unless you choose to find it there. There is, instead, a kind of quiet dignity and a quiet belonging. You belong to the small company of things that are awake. You are part of whatever it is in the universe that notices and wonders and cares, whether that company numbers in the billions scattered across the galaxies, or whether it is smaller than we ever imagined, perhaps far smaller. You are a member of it, tonight, simply by lying here and thinking about the silence. And that membership asks nothing of you right now except to rest and to feel, gently, how remarkable it is to be a waking mind at all in so vast and so quiet a cosmos. Let the silence be a comfort then, rather than a worry, as you drift. It is not the silence of something gone wrong. It is, as far as we can tell, simply how the universe is, at least for now, at least as far as we can hear. Vast and old and quiet and mostly asleep, with here and there, perhaps very rarely, a small warm place where something has woken up and begun to wonder. You are one of those places. The silence is the backdrop against which your own small light shines, and the emptier the sky, the brighter that light becomes. There is nothing to fear in a quiet universe. There is only a great deal to be grateful for in being one of the few things in it that is awake to notice the quiet at all. Come back gently to the scale of it all, one more time, because it holds the whole feeling of tonight. We are one species, on one world, around one star, in one galaxy, among hundreds of billions of galaxies. We have been able to ask these questions for less than a single century, a flicker against the age of the universe. And in that flicker, we have counted the stars and found the worlds and framed the paradox and imagined the filter and begun, however faintly, to listen. We have not found anyone, but we have learned to ask, clearly and honestly, one of the deepest questions there is: where is everybody? And we have learned to sit with the silence that answers, without pretending to know more than we do. That honesty is itself a kind of achievement and a peaceful place to rest. We do not know whether we are alone. We do not know whether the filter is behind us or ahead. We do not know whether the silence is a warning or a reassurance, or simply the ordinary quiet of a universe in which life is rare. And we can hold all of that not knowing calmly, without fear, the way you might hold any deep mystery at the edge of sleep, turning it over gently, admiring it, and then letting it rest. Some questions are not for solving tonight. Some questions are just for wondering at, in the dark, before sleep. And the question of the silence is one of the finest of those there is. It is worth spending a quiet while on the other shapes that answers to the silence can take, because the great filter is not the only idea people have offered, and the others are worth knowing, held gently, as part of the whole picture. Some thinkers have suggested that the silence is not about how hard it is for life to arise or survive, but about a choice that advanced civilizations might make. Perhaps the loud, expanding, galaxy-spanning kind of civilization we imagine is simply not what mature civilizations become. Perhaps they turn inward, growing quieter and more efficient rather than larger and louder, content with their own worlds, uninterested in filling the sky. If that is the way of things, then the galaxy could hold many old and wise civilizations, all of them quiet by choice, none of them sprawling across the stars in the way that would make them visible to us. Others have offered a darker possibility, sometimes called the dark forest. The idea that the galaxy is silent because it is dangerous, because any civilization that calls out risks being noticed by something that would rather it did not exist. And so the wise ones stay hidden, listening but never speaking, like creatures in a forest at night who have learned that noise draws predators. It is a grim thought, and it makes for gripping stories, but it suffers the same difficulty as the other perfect silence answers. It would require every civilization, everywhere, without exception, to make the same fearful choice, and to succeed perfectly in staying hidden, and to have left no trace at all in the whole history of the galaxy. That is a great deal to ask of a whole galaxy of independent minds. Still, it is part of the landscape of ideas, and worth knowing, even as we hold it lightly. There is a gentler idea, too, that has nothing to do with filters or fear, and it is simply the possibility that we are early. The universe is still young, in a sense. Stars will keep forming for a very, very long time, far longer than the time that has passed so far. Some have argued that the great age of life in the universe may be ahead of us, not behind, that we may be among the first civilizations to arise, rather than latecomers to a crowded party. If that is so, then the silence is not strange at all. We are early guests arriving before the others in a universe that will grow more alive, not less, over the ages to come. In that reading, we are not the last of many. We are among the first of what may someday be a great company, still mostly unborn. There is something rather hopeful in that, a silence that is not empty but merely early, a party that has barely begun. Notice that all of these ideas, the filter, the quiet choice, the dark forest, the early arrival, share one honest feature. Not one of them is proven. Each is a story we tell to make sense of a silence we do not yet understand, and a good thinker holds all of them at once, lightly, without committing too firmly to any, waiting for the evidence that has not yet come. That is not a failure of understanding. It is the correct posture toward a genuine mystery. We have several reasonable explanations, and no way yet to choose between them. And so we hold them all, gently, as possibilities, and we keep looking, and we do not pretend to know more than we do. There is a real maturity in that, a willingness to live inside an open question without forcing it shut. And living inside an open question, it turns out, is a rather peaceful thing to practice, especially at the edge of sleep. So much of the anxiety in life comes from wanting certainty where there is none, from needing to know how things will turn out. The great silence offers a chance to practice the opposite, to rest easily in not knowing, to hold a vast and unanswered question without fear, simply turning it over in the mind, admiring its shape, and then setting it down. We do not know why the universe is quiet. We may never know. And that is all right. It does not have to be resolved tonight or ever for you to rest. The not knowing can be a soft place if you let it, rather than a sharp one. It can be a kind of open window onto wonder, rather than a locked door. It is worth letting your mind rest, for a while, on the sheer patience the question asks of us, because there is something calming in accepting how slow the answer must be. We have been listening for only about 60 years. We have been broadcasting for only about 100. Against the age of the galaxy, which is more than 10 billion years, our entire technological existence is less than the blink of an eye, a single flicker so brief that if the history of the galaxy were compressed into a single year, we would have appeared in the last fraction of the last second before midnight. We are asking the universe a question, and we have barely begun to wait for the reply. It would be strange, almost arrogant, to expect an answer so soon. Think of what it would mean to truly search, to listen not for decades, but for millennia, patiently, across the whole sky, in every way a signal might come, to send probes to the nearby worlds and to the ones beyond, and to wait the long centuries for them to arrive and report, to build the instruments that could see the faint glow of distant engineering, or the subtle signatures of life in the air of far planets. All of this is possible in principle, but it is the work not of a single lifetime, but of many, a project on the scale of civilizations, not individuals. The question of whether we are alone may simply be too large to answer quickly. It may be a question that takes our species centuries, or longer, to resolve, if we resolve it at all. And there is a kind of peace in accepting that, in knowing that we are early in a very long inquiry, and that our part is only to add a little, and to pass the question on. There is a deep humility in the whole endeavor, and humility is a restful thing to lie down with. We do not know if we are alone. We do not know how life begins, or how often. We do not know whether minds like ours are common or vanishingly rare. We do not know whether great filters lie behind us or ahead. We have one example of a living world, our own, and from that single case, we are trying to reason about the whole universe, which is a little like trying to understand all of the ocean from a single drop. Any honest account of the silence must begin by admitting how little we know, and how much of what we say is careful guessing, held up against a vast darkness. That admission is not a weakness. It is the beginning of wisdom, and it is a gentle place to rest. This acceptance of how small our knowledge is against how large the question is. And yet, within all that not knowing, there is one thing we do know, and it is the most important thing of all, and the most comforting. We know that life is possible, because we are here. We know that matter can wake up and think and wonder, because it has, at least once, in us. Whatever the odds, whatever the filters, whatever the reason for the silence, the universe has managed, at least in this one small corner, to produce something that can look up and ask about itself. That is not a guess. That is not uncertain. It is the one solid fact in the whole vast mystery. We exist. The universe is not entirely empty of minds, because it holds ours. And that single certainty, held against all the darkness and all the silence, is enough to build a quiet hope upon. For if it happened once, here, then it is not impossible. And if it is not impossible, then perhaps it has happened elsewhere, or will, somewhere in the long future of the cosmos, on some warm world under some distant star. We may never meet them, we may never hear them, but the mere fact of our own existence proves that the universe can do this, can make a mind, can wake itself up and wonder. And that is a hopeful thought to carry into sleep, whatever the silence finally means. We are proof that it is possible. We are the universe's one certain example of itself coming awake, and whether we are alone or not, that is a remarkable and precious thing to be. Let us widen the view one last time, gently, to the whole shape of tonight. We are a small species, on a small world, awake for the merest flicker of cosmic time, gazing out at a vast and silent universe, and asking why it is so quiet. We have counted the worlds, and found them beyond number. We have measured the time, and found it beyond imagining. We have framed the paradox, and imagined the filter, and considered the many answers, and listened, patiently, to a sky that has not yet replied. And in all of that, we have found no one, but we have also found ourselves, and found how rare and strange and precious a thing it is to be a mind at all, in a cosmos that may hold very few. The silence, in the end, does not diminish us. It sets us apart and lights us up, one small, warm spark of wondering in an ocean of quiet dark. There is a practical side to all of this, and it is worth touching gently, because it turns an abstract puzzle into something quietly meaningful. If there is any chance that the great filter lies ahead of us, at some step we have not yet passed, then the most important thing we can possibly do is to be the ones who make it through. And whatever that deadly step is, our best defense against it is the same set of gentle virtues that would serve us anyway: care, foresight, cooperation, the wisdom not to destroy ourselves with the powers we have gained. The great filter, taken seriously, is really an argument for treating our own survival as precious, for being careful with our one small world and our one brief chance. It asks us not to be reckless with the rare thing we are. And there is something oddly unifying in that thought. If we are among the very few minds in the galaxy, or perhaps the only ones within reach, then the differences that divide us here on Earth shrink to almost nothing against the vast silence outside. All of us, every person who has ever lived, are members of the same rare thing, the same small flame of awareness in a dark and quiet cosmos. Seen from the scale of the Fermi paradox, humanity is not many peoples but one fragile, precious, improbable species, sharing one small world in a universe that may hold no others like us for unthinkable distances. there is a gentle solidarity in that, a reason to be kinder to one another, born not of sentiment, but of sheer cosmic rarity. We are, all of us together, the universe's rare experiment in wakefulness, and we are in it together. It is worth remembering, too, that the question itself has changed us, quite apart from any answer, simply by asking where everybody is, simply by taking seriously the possibility of other minds. We have been led to look at ourselves in a new way, from the outside, as one civilization among the many that could exist. That perspective is valuable in itself. It lets us see our own moment more clearly, to recognize how young we are, how much power we have suddenly gained, how carefully we ought to use it. The search for others has always been, in part, a way of understanding ourselves, of placing our own brief story against the vast backdrop of what is possible. And even if we never find anyone, that clearer view of ourselves may turn out to be the most valuable thing the search ever gives us. There is a final subtlety worth holding gently, because it is one of the deepest and strangest ideas in the whole discussion, and it concerns the very fact that we are here to ask the question at all. Whenever we reason about how likely our own existence was, we have to remember that we could only ever find ourselves in a universe and on a world where the improbable steps happened to succeed. A world where life never began would have no one on it to notice its own emptiness. So we should not be surprised to find ourselves on one of the rare worlds where everything went right, however rare such worlds may be, because those are the only worlds that have anyone to be surprised. This gentle twist, this observer effect, makes the reasoning tricky, and it is one reason careful thinkers are so cautious about drawing firm conclusions from our single example. We are not a random sample of worlds. We are, necessarily, one of the ones that worked. That idea can make your head spin a little at the edge of sleep, and there is no need to hold it tightly. But it carries a soft and lovely implication. Every one of us exists at the end of an unbroken chain of successes, stretching back billions of years, through every gate on the long road from dead matter to a thinking mind. Not one of your ancestors, all the way back to the first living thing, failed to survive and pass life on, or you would not be here. You are the living tip of a chain of good fortune 4 billion years long. Whatever the odds against life, against complexity, against intelligence, you are proof that the whole improbable sequence can succeed, because it did, in you. And that is a quietly staggering thing to be, however common or rare such things turn out to be across the silent galaxy. So carry that, gently, into sleep, rather than the worry. Not the fear of a filter ahead, which may or may not be there, and which you cannot do anything about tonight in any case. But the quiet wonder of being the living end of an unbroken chain of success, one of the rare waking minds in a vast and silent universe, a small warm spark that the cosmos, against long odds, managed to light. The silence around you is not a threat. It is the enormous dark backdrop that makes your own small flame so precious. And your only task tonight is to let that flame burn low and soft, and to rest, and to trust that it will still be lit in the morning. It is worth returning, gently, to the two feelings that sit at the very center of this whole question, because naming them clearly can take away some of their sting. The first feeling is emptiness, the sense that the universe is vast and mostly barren, world after dead world, with almost nothing living anywhere. The second feeling is silence, the sense that even if something is out there, no one is speaking, that we call and call into the dark and nothing answers. Emptiness and silence. They are old and deep human fears, the fear of the barren place and the fear of the unanswered call, and the Fermi paradox presses on both of them at once. That is why it can feel so heavy if you let it. It touches two of the oldest dreads we have. But look at what we have found tonight, holding both of those feelings up to the light. The emptiness, it turns out, may be the very thing that makes us precious. If the universe is mostly barren, then a living, thinking world is a rare jewel, and we are that jewel, and the barrenness around us is simply the dark setting that makes the jewel shine. And the silence, it turns out, may be reassurance rather than warning, a sign that the hardest test is behind us, that we are the rare survivors, not the doomed latecomers. Both of the old fears, examined gently, soften into something closer to wonder. The empty universe becomes a measure of our rareness. The silent universe becomes a quiet backdrop for our own small voice. Neither has to be a source of dread. Both can be held instead as a strange kind of gift. And there is a further softening, the gentlest of all. Even if none of the hopeful readings is true, even if we are simply alone for reasons we will never fully understand, the emptiness and the silence still cannot take anything from us tonight. They are far away. They are abstract. They do not touch the warmth of your bed, or the quiet of your room, or the steady rhythm of your own breathing. The great silence has been there through every night of your life, and every night of it, you have slept and woken and lived, entirely untouched by it. It asks nothing of you. It threatens nothing that you can feel. It is simply the vast and quiet backdrop against which your small, warm, particular life goes on exactly as it always has. And that life, whatever the universe is or is not doing out there in the dark, is yours. And it is enough. There is a reason people find these questions soothing rather than frightening. In the end, and it is worth naming as we draw toward the close, it is because they put our small daily troubles in a gentle and merciful perspective. Set against the scale of the galaxy and the depth of the silence and the billions of years and billions of worlds, the worries that fill an ordinary day shrink to their true size, which is very small, not because they do not matter, but because they are held now within something so much larger that their sharp edges soften. There is a mercy in the vastness. It does not mock our small concerns. It simply surrounds them with so much quiet space that they can breathe and settle and loosen their grip. To think about the whole silent universe at the end of a long day is to be reminded that most of what troubled you today is smaller than you felt it to be, and that is a kind of relief. So let the great questions do that gentle work tonight. Let them lift you for a little while out of the small and close concerns of the day and set you down in the vast and quiet cosmos among the billions of silent worlds as one rare waking mind among however many or few there are. And let that wider view soften everything, the way distance softens the noise of a city, until all that is left is a calm and spacious quiet, and your own slow breathing, and the soft weight of your body sinking toward sleep. The universe is vast and old and silent, and you are small and brief and awake, and there is no contradiction in any of it, only a gentle and spacious peace, large enough to rest inside. Let us slow the mind right down now with a few small and simple thoughts before the story closes. The universe is old, almost 14 billion years. Our sun is younger, about 4.5 billion. And us? We have been here, as a thinking species, for a few 100,000 years at most, as a species that builds radios for about 100 years, against 14 billion. If you shrank the whole history of the universe into a single year, all of human history would fit in the last few seconds before midnight. Our radios would be the last flicker of the final second. That is how new we are. That is how young. We are not old voices in the galaxy. We are the newest possible arrivals, calling out on our very first night. So think about what it means to have heard nothing yet. We have been listening for 60 years. 60 years against 10 billion. It is like dipping a cup once into the sea, finding no fish in it, and wondering where all the fish have gone. Of course, the cup came up empty. We have barely begun to look. The silence we have found so far is real, but it is the silence of the first moment of listening, not the silence of a search completed. We should not read too much into it yet. The conversation, if there is one to be had, has barely started. We have only just learned to listen at all, and there is one more small thought to hold, the smallest and the largest at once. We are here. Whatever else is true, that much is certain. In a universe that may be almost entirely without minds, there is at least this one small world where matter has woken up and looked around and begun to wonder. That is not nothing. That may be one of the rarest things the universe ever does, and you are part of it. Lying here, in the dark, thinking about the silence, you are the universe knowing itself, in one of its very few waking corners. There is no need to feel small about that. It is one of the grandest things there is to be. So let those simple thoughts settle over you, one by one, as the day lets go. We are new. We have barely begun to look, and we are here, awake, wondering, one rare warm spark in a vast and quiet dark. None of it needs solving tonight. None of it needs answering. It is enough for now simply to be one of the waking minds, resting, while the great silent universe turns slowly on around you, needing nothing, asking nothing, holding you gently in all its quiet vastness. It is worth spending a last quiet while on the strange privilege of living in the age when this question can even be asked, because that, too, is a gift easy to overlook. For nearly all of human history, no one could have wondered where everybody was, because no one knew there was anywhere for anybody to be. People looked up and saw lights on a dome and told stories about them, but they had no idea that those lights were suns, or that suns had worlds, or that the faint smudges between the stars were other galaxies, oceans of suns beyond counting. The whole framework of the question, the vastness, the worlds, the deep time, is a discovery of the last century or so. Your great-grandparents were born into a smaller universe, one without the paradox in it at all, because the scale that creates the paradox had not yet been found. And so, you are among the first human beings ever to be able to hold this particular wonder, to know that there are billions of worlds, to know that the galaxy is old enough to have been filled many times over, to feel the strangeness of the silence, and to have names for it, and ideas about it, and a patient search underway to resolve it. None of that was available to anyone who lived before the last few generations. It is a brand new inheritance, handed to you across a very short span of time by all the astronomers and thinkers who built it, and you can receive it gently as one of the quiet gifts of being alive right now in this particular chapter of the human story. There is a deep continuity in that, worth resting on. You are part of a long line of people who have looked up and wondered, stretching back to the very first humans who ever gazed at the stars and felt the pull of the question. They wondered without knowing the scale. We wonder knowing it. and those who come after us will wonder with better tools and more data, and perhaps one day, an answer. Each generation adds a little to the wondering and passes it on, the way all our deepest questions are passed on, hand to hand, down the long chain of the curious. Tonight, simply by lying here and thinking about the silence, you are part of that chain, one of the wondering ones, carrying the question forward for your own small span before handing it on. And that is a fine and gentle thing to be, as the day closes. Not the one who answers the question, for no one yet can. Just one of the ones who holds it, for a while, with wonder rather than fear, and then sets it down, softly, and rests. The question will keep. It is kept for as long as there have been minds to ask it, and it will keep through this night, and be there in the morning, and be there long after you and everyone you know is gone, waiting, patiently, for someone, someday, to find the answer. You do not have to find it tonight. You only have to rest, one waking mind among the few, letting the great question turn slowly beside you in the dark, as gentle and as harmless as starlight. It is worth taking a slow breath as well over the plainest and most reassuring fact in all of this, which is simply that nothing about the great silence can reach you. It is not a danger in the way a storm is a danger, or a fire. It is a fact about the distant universe, unimaginably far away, entirely beyond the reach of your small and quiet life. Whatever the answer turns out to be, whether we are alone or not, whether the filter is behind us or ahead, none of it changes the safety of this room, or the warmth of this bed, or the steady beating of your own heart tonight. The question is vast, but it is gentle. It is one of those rare mysteries you can turn over endlessly and never be harmed by, because it lives entirely in the mind, out among the stars, and never once touches the ground where you actually rest. And that is perhaps the truest reason these thoughts make such good companions for sleep. They are enormous, and they are harmless. They fill the mind with something spacious and slow and calm, something far larger than the small worries of the day, and yet something that asks nothing of you, and threatens nothing, and can simply be admired, like a vast dark sky, and then let go. You can walk right up to the edge of the deepest question there is, the question of whether we are alone in all the universe, and stand there for a while in wonder, and then turn, quite safely, and come back to your warm bed and sleep. The mystery will still be there tomorrow. It is in no hurry, and neither, tonight, are you. So let the whole vast silent cosmos be for a moment simply a great and gentle quiet all around you, holding your own small quiet within it, the way a still night holds a single sleeping house. You are one waking mind, growing sleepy now, in a universe full of silent worlds, and there is nothing to fear in that, and nothing to solve, and nothing to do, except to let yourself grow quieter still, and to join, for a few hours, the great restful silence of everything, until the morning comes and wakes you gently back into the rare and precious business of being alive and aware. And perhaps that is the gentlest way to hold the whole of it, as sleep draws near. Somewhere out there, across billions of silent worlds, the great question waits, unanswered, patient, harmless. We do not know why the sky is quiet. We do not know if we are alone. We do not know whether the hardest step is behind us or ahead. And none of that not knowing can touch the warm and simple fact of this moment, which is that you are here, and safe and awake, one rare small light in an enormous dark, resting now at the end of a long day. That is enough. It has always been enough. The silence can keep its secret one more night, while you let go and drift and sleep. Let us slow down one last time with a few small thoughts before the close. The sky is quiet. That is the fact. We have looked, we have listened, and so far nothing. It could mean we are alone. It could mean we are early. It could mean the others are quiet or hidden or simply too far. Or it could mean the hardest step is already behind us, safely past. We do not know which, and that is fine. There is no need to know tonight. A good question can be held without an answer. It can be turned over gently and admired and set down. This is one of those questions, vast and open and calm, not a problem to solve before sleep, just a wonder to rest beside. So rest beside it now. Let the silence be soft, not sharp. Let the emptiness be spacious, not lonely. You are one small, waking mind, warm and safe in a great, quiet universe. That is a rare thing to be. It is enough to be it, tonight, and nothing more. Let the question keep. Let the stars keep. And let yourself, gently, begin to sleep. It is worth remembering, too, how much wonder the question has already given us, quite apart from any answer. That is a rare kind of gift, and worth pausing on. Most questions give nothing until they are answered. This one has been paying us for decades, in wonder, in perspective, in a clearer view of our own small and precious place, and it asks so little in return. Only that we keep looking, and keep listening, and keep wondering, gently, without needing to know the end. And of all the questions a small and curious species could choose to carry with it through the dark, there are few finer than this one. Where is everybody? 3 quiet words, holding the whole vastness of the cosmos and our own strange, precious place within it. It is a good question to have. It is a good question to sleep beside, and it will still be there in the morning, patient as ever, waiting to be wondered at again. So let it wait, and let yourself now, gently, rest. In asking where everybody is, we learned to count the worlds, and found them beyond number. We learned the deep age of the cosmos, and the shape of our own beginnings. We learned to listen to the sky, and to read the silence, and to reason carefully about our own rareness. The question gave us all of that, and it has not even been answered yet. Some questions are generous that way. They pay us in understanding long before they pay us in answers, and sometimes the understanding is the better gift. The great silence has already taught us a great deal about ourselves, and it will teach us more in time, whether or not it ever fully speaks. So let us gather the whole of it together now, gently, the way you draw a blanket up at the end of a long day, before we let the story fade into sleep. We began with a simple, staggering observation. The universe is vast and old and full of worlds, so many worlds, billions in our galaxy alone, more than the grains of sand on all the beaches of the earth in the cosmos entire. With so many chances, over so many billions of years, and with a galaxy that could be crossed in a small fraction of its age, we might expect the cosmos to be full of life, crowded with voices. And yet, when we look and when we listen, we find silence. We met the man who framed the puzzle, Enrico Fermi, and his simple lunchtime question, "Where is everybody?" We met Frank Drake and his gentle equation, which organized the question into steps and showed us exactly where our ignorance lives, in the later, unknown factors. The leap from a suitable world to a living one, from a living one to a thinking one, from a thinking one to one that lasts. And we sat with the great silence, the complete and patient quiet that our long listening has, so far, returned. We walked through the easy answers, distance, and quiet, and hiding, and not having looked hard enough, and found that each holds some truth, but none quite dissolves the puzzle. And so we came to Robin Hansen's sharper idea, the great filter, the thought that somewhere on the long road from dead matter to a galaxy-spanning civilization, there lies a step so hard that almost nothing passes it. We considered where that gate might lie, at the origin of life, or the birth of the complex cell, or the rise of technological intelligence, and we came to the question that matters most. Is the filter behind us, so that we are rare survivors with an open future, or ahead of us, so that our own silence may be waiting up the road? We followed that fork to its strange conclusion that finding abundant life elsewhere might be bad news, pushing the filter ahead of us, while finding ourselves truly alone might be reassuring, placing the filter safely behind. And we were honest, too, that there may be no single filter at all, that once you handle the deep uncertainty properly, being alone becomes simply one of the ordinary, expected outcomes, and the paradox softens into something far less strange. And through all of it, we found that the silence, held gently, is more comforting than frightening, a backdrop against which our own rare light shines all the brighter. You do not need to hold any of it now. Let the names go, and the arguments, and the equations. Let the filter, wherever it lies, drift away into the dark. Keep only the one gentle feeling, if you keep anything at all, of a vast and quiet universe full of silent worlds, with here and there, very rarely, a small warm place where something has woken up and begun to wonder. You are one of those places. That is the whole of it. In all that silence, you are awake and warm and here. So let the whole question settle now, slowly, the way stillness settles over a room at the very end of the day. We have been a long way tonight, out across the galaxy and its billions of worlds, through the deepest silence there is, to the edge of one of the largest questions we can ask. It is time to come home now, and to rest. Come back the long way, gently, without any hurry. Back from the far reaches of the silent galaxy, past its billions of quiet worlds, some barren, some perhaps coded in simple life that has never stirred. Back toward one ordinary star among hundreds of billions, our own sun, warm and steady. Back to the small worlds that circle it. Back toward the small blue world third from the sun, the one world we know of, in all that silence, where life woke up and learned to wonder. Down through the thin, soft layer of its air. Down toward the part of the world where night has fallen, where the lights of the towns glow warm against the dark. Down toward your own country, your own town, your own street. Down toward this building and this room and the quiet bed where you are lying, warm and safe and awake, one of the rare waking minds in a vast and silent cosmos. Feel the weight of your body against the bed. Feel how still the room is. Feel how quiet the night is, all around you. A small and gentle echo of the great quiet that fills the whole universe. There is nothing out there in all that silence that needs anything from you tonight. Let your breathing slow and deepen all on its own, in and out. And with each breath out, let a little more of the day go with it. Let the great question go. Let the filter and the silence and the billions of worlds all drift away. Let the universe be as quiet as it is, and let yourself grow quiet with it. Feel your shoulders soften. Feel your jaw unclench. Feel your hands grow heavy and your legs grow warm and loose, sinking into the bed. There is a deep peace, if you let yourself feel it, in being one small waking mind, warm and safe, in a vast and quiet universe. You do not have to fill the silence. You do not have to answer the question. You do not have to be anything more tonight than what you already are, which is one of the rarest things the cosmos makes, a place where it has woken up and come to know itself, resting now, gently, in the dark. Whatever the reason for the great silence, you are here, and you are awake, and that is enough, and more than enough. You can set it all down now. You can let the silent universe turn on without you, full of its quiet worlds, and let yourself sink, softly, into the near and simple quiet of sleep, which asks nothing of you at all. You are one small light in a vast dark, and tonight your only task is to let that light grow soft and dim, and rest and trust that it will still be here, warm and awake in the morning. Rest now. Let it all drift. Let yourself be for a while, simply one quiet mind in a quiet universe, and let that quiet carry you down, gently, into sleep. Good night.